In this video, we're going to review the concepts of assembly categories and subcategories. I'll do this by first describing what they are, and then I'll provide some examples, and then describe how they're used and do an actual walkthrough of a real-world use case. Before you continue with this video, please make sure you understand what an assembly is first. If you don't understand assemblies, then the rest of the video is not going to make much sense. So what is an assembly category and a subcategory? An assembly category describes a grouping of assemblies under a common name. For example, you might have a pole category that would group all of the assemblies together underneath that label pole. An assembly subcategory further groups and refines a set of assemblies within a particular category. So going back to the pole example, you might start with a pole category, and then from there you would select a subcategory of crossarm, which would then group all the crossarm assemblies together underneath that pole category. You might have another subcategory of arrestor, and that would then group all of the arrestors together. An important note, an assembly can only be associated to one assembly category and subcategory. The subcategory is optional, although we do recommend using it. Assembly categories are the broadest level of assembly grouping. So think of the assembly category as the first part of a two-step selection process. So in a scenario where you need to select an assembly, you would first pick the assembly category, like pole, and then pick the subcategory, like crossarm. Different types of assembly categories could be poles, conductor, cabinets, conduit, etc. You can decide which categories you want to use. That is completely up to you. That's also true of the subcategory, so how those are associated is entirely under your control. The assembly subcategory is a logical grouping of assemblies within the assembly category. So think of the assembly subcategory as the second part of a two-step selection process. So in our example before, we selected pole as our category. That gave us a short list of subcategories associated to that pole. So you might have anchor, arrestor, cutout, crossarm, fault indicator, etc. So from there you pick the particular subcategory. So let's go back to our crossarm, and then I would see just a small list of crossarm assemblies, and I would select it from there. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. So in the first example, we have a pole category, and once that is selected, then you see a number of different subcategories within that. So here we have anchor, arrestor, cluster mount, cutout, crossarm, fault indicator, guy, and riser. There could be others. It all depends on how you want to organize your subcategories within any particular category. When you're using the software and you pick a category and subcategory, then you're going to see a smaller list of options. And so here I've picked the arrestor, and then if you see where the arrow points to, you can see that then shows me a short list of, I've got a 10-inch screwed anchor, a 12-inch screwed anchor, and a 20-inch cross plate. And so I could then select one of those assemblies and then save that and then continue on. The next thing, maybe I want to pick a crossarm, and same thing, I will see just the 8-inch wood crossarm, 10-inch wood crossarm, and the 12-inch fiberglass crossarm. At the end of this video, I'll actually show within the software picking a pole and an arrestor category, subcategory, and then selecting an assembly, and then same with the crossarm, so you can see how that all works. In the next example, we have conductor. So same kind of idea, the category is conductor, so when I select that, I get a list of subcategories: overhead, primary, secondary, service, and street light, and then underground, primary, secondary, service, and street light. And again, when I pick one of these subcategories, I get a smaller list of assemblies. So in this case, overhead primary leads to these assemblies, secondary underground leads to these subassemblies. The main purpose of assembly categories and subcategories is to help you quickly find and select an assembly record. And the use cases for those that you're most commonly going to run into are when you're doing a system inventory and you need to select an assembly. This helps to narrow those down in that process. Or if you are working on a work order and you're defining what's being installed or what's being removed on a layout, this also allows you to do that more easily. And then you might also later down the road be updating your system map and have existing assemblies that are set up as in plant, or you need to do that on some things you missed. This is also going to be used for that as well. So let's talk about a real-world scenario, such as a system inventory. So how would that work? You need to collect all of the assets in your system. You have an iPad and you're going around to, let's say, a pole, and then you're going to collect the information that's on that pole so that it is recorded as assemblies. And so the assembly category and subcategory helps make that easier. So when you go to that pole, you can pick a category and subcategory to narrow that list of assemblies down, and then it should be really easy from there to pick the one that you want that applies to whatever that asset or item happens to be. So let's see that in action. We're looking at a screen that is displayed after you've selected the pole on an iPad, and it's showing existing construction units that have been associated to that pole. Currently it's blank, and so the first step is to click the plus button, and that will start creating a brand new construction unit. I want to collect an arrestor, a crossarm, and record the pole itself. And so I need assemblies for all three of those. So to start doing that, I'm going to first select the category, and it's already pole, but you can see the list here. And then the subcategory is then narrowed down to just the subcategories that are related to poles. And so I'm going to then pick arrestor. And the next step is then to click on Find Code. And so this is going to list all of the assemblies that are listed as pole arrestor subcategories. And so I only have two options here. I'm going to pick arrestor as my first one, and then it will then put in the description. It's going to default a count of 1. It always remembers the last CPR year and district that was selected, so I already have those populated, so I'm going to just leave those as is, and then I'm going to click on Save, and then you'll see that added to the list of construction units. So it's saying, you know, what's in plant right now at that pole is this arrestor. The next thing I want to record is the crossarm. So I already have pole selected for the category, so I'm going to go back to subcategory, and I'm going to pick crossarm from the list, and then click Find Code again, and then I just see the crossarms that are available. So I'm going to pick 10-foot crossarm. Again, everything is populated for me, and I can just change whatever I need to, and then I'll click the Save button. And the last thing I want to do is to select the pole itself. So that is an asset, so it needs to be recorded. And again, I have pole already selected, and the subcategory in this case is distribution. This might be something else, but however you want to subcategorize the pole assemblies, you can do that in whatever way makes the most sense. And then I'll click on Find Pole again, and you can see the list of all the assemblies from 30-foot on down to 65-foot. This one's a 40-foot one, so I'm going to pick up that, and again, records all my information, and I click Save. That's really all there is to that. At this point, I may go back to my map and then click on something else. Let's say another pole, or let's say it was a conductor, and in that case, I would then continue that process until I've collected all of the assemblies and assets that I wanted to for the system inventory process. And that completes our training video on understanding assembly categories and subcategories.